Charles Kimbrough, actor best known for Murphy Brown, dies at 86. In a career that included a Tony nomination for Company, he specialized in playing uptight characters, notably Candice Bergen's stuffy straight man. Charles Kimbrough, an actor known for his patrician looks and stately bearing, who was nominated for an Emmy Award for portraying a comically rigid news anchor on the hit sitcom Murphy Brown, died on January 11 in Culver City, California. He was 86. His son, John Kimbrough, confirmed the death. After decades of stage work in New York, including a Tony Award-nominated performance in the original 1970 Broadway production of the Stephen Sondheim musical Company, Mr. Kimbrough finally got his first taste of mainstream fame alongside Candice Bergen on Murphy Brown, the popular series set in a television newsroom that ran for 10 seasons on CBS starting in 1988. He reprised his character for 3 episodes of the 2018 reboot. As Jim Dial, Mr. Kimbrough artfully toyed with the wooden archetype of the 1980s newsman with his lacquered helmet of hair, Walter Cronkite-like air of seriousness, and old boy swagger. He lovingly referred to Miss Bergen's investigative reporter character as Slugger. His rigid, pompous manner made him the ideal straight man for the show's ever-topical plotlines. In one 1997 episode, Jim is tasked with finding marijuana for Murphy, who is seeking to ease the symptoms of her chemotherapy. "Wow, look at this. You must have spent a fortune," Murphy exclaims as she holds aloft a large plastic bag of cannabis. "Damn right I did," Jim responds. "Nickel bag, my Aunt Sally." It was hardly the first role that allowed him to explore fussy or priggish characters. In the 2012 Broadway revival of Harvey, the Pulitzer Prize-winning 1944 play about a man played by Jim Parsons, who ends up in a sanitarium because of his friendship with a 6-foot-tall imaginary rabbit, Mr. Kimbrough played the exacting psychiatrist who's obsessed with the image of his institution. Mr. Kimbrough received strong reviews for his performance in the 1995 production of A.R. Gurney's Sylvia at the Manhattan Theatre Club. He played Greg, a middle-class husband struggling with midlife crisis, a wobbly character, and his marriage to Kate, Blythe Danner, which grows more complicated after he brings home a new dog, Sylvia, played in a very human form by Sarah Jessica Parker. Not that Mr. Kimbrough ever ought to play stiffs. "Unfortunately, I'm really good at playing jackasses of one kind or another," he told the Wall Street Journal in 2012. "I've always been slightly self-conscious as an actor, and I guess that's sometimes read as pomposity. Starting when I was 30, he continued, I somehow gave off an impression at an audition that had them mentally put me in a 3-piece suit or put an attaché case in my hand. If there was a stiff guy part, the director would brighten up when I came in. That wasn't the response I wanted. I was in anguish. It was not always so. As a younger actor, he played a wide variety of characters who were much more dynamic," John Kimbrough said in a phone interview. "Some of my earliest memories are of watching him in Candid, a 1974 production of the Leonard Bernstein musical, in which Clive Barnes of the New York Times described Mr. Kimbrough's performance as brilliant. He played 5 different characters, and he was a dynamo, jumping in and out of costume changes. That was not his only kinetic performance. As Mr. Kimbrough put it in a 2002 interview with Newsday, when I first came to New York, I'd played these sweaty physical guys who bounded all over the stage. I didn't do a show when I wasn't soaking wet at the end. Even so, he had a natural feel for playing emotionally repressed characters, in part because of his own family background. He came from a buttoned-up Midwestern family, and so he had grown up with people very much like the characters he played," his son said. "They felt very deeply, but kept it hidden beneath a facade of manners and propriety. Somehow, he was able to communicate that feeling to audiences, even as the guys he played were keeping it all inside." Charles Mayberry Kimbrough was born on May 23, 1936 in St. Paul, Minnesota, the older of 2 children of Charles and Emily Rodenbush Kimbrough. When he was a young child, the family moved to Highland Park, Illinois near Chicago, where his father sold commercial heating equipment. A lover of music, particularly opera, Mr. Kimbrough majored in music and theater at Indiana University and later received a master's degree from the Yale School of Drama. Moving to New York, he endured the typical struggles of a young actor until he got his big break as Harry, a hard-drinking husband fighting off the lure of the bottle and the Harold Prince production of Company, the celebrated Sondheim musical about a single man, his girlfriends, and the couples he knows as they navigate the complexities of loneliness and love in New York City. In a roundabout way, Mr. Kimbrough found love himself through the production, albeit 3 decades later. In 2002, years after his divorce in 1991 from his first wife, Mary Jane Wilson Kimbrough, an actress he'd met at Yale, he married Beth Howland, who had played alongside him in Company as an anxiety-ridden bride, and who later found fame as Vera, the flighty diner waitress on the long-running sitcom Alice, which debuted in 1976. Miss Howland died in 2015. In addition to a son, Mr. Kimbrough is survived by a sister, Linda Kimbrough, and a stepdaughter, Holly Howland. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Mr. Kimbrough continued to work steadily, appearing on television shows like Kojak, and films like The Seduction of Joe Tynan, 1979, with Alan Alda, while also paying the bills as a wholesome American in television spots for Imperial Margarine and Chef Boyardee's spaghetti and meatballs. But it was only with Murphy Brown, his son said, that he found a degree of fame where fans recognized him on the street, and his success allowed him to make peace with being typecast as stodgy. He came to realize that stuffiness is not dullness, Mr. Kimbrough told Newsday. And that gave me a new lease on life. Original run. Murphy Brown, Candice Bergen, is a recovering alcoholic who in the show's first episode returns to the fictional magazine FYI for the first time following a stay at the Betty Ford Clinic Residential Treatment Center. Over 40 and single, she is sharp-tongued and hard as nails. In her profession, she's considered one of the boys, having shattered many glass ceilings encountered during her career. Dominating the FYI news magazine, she is portrayed as one of America's hardest-hitting, though not the warmest or most sympathetic media personalities. Her colleagues at FYI include stuffy veteran anchor Jim Dial, Charles Kimbrough, who affectionately addresses Murphy as Slugger, and reminisces about the glory days of Murrow and Cronkite. Murphy's best friend and sometime competitor is investigative reporter Frank Fontana, Joe Ragabulto, the only person who addresses her as Murph. Though a daredevil reporter, insecurities regarding fame and especially his personal relationships have him in psychotherapy for the majority of the series. In early seasons, there was a running gag about Frank's toupee, which he hated, but which producers insisted he wear on the show. Also present are the 2 newest members of the FYI team, Miles Silverberg. Grant Shod, a 25-year-old yuppie Harvard graduate and overreacher fresh from public television, is appointed the new executive producer of FYI during Murphy's stay at Betty Ford. Naive and neurotic despite his lightning intellect, Miles is the perfect foil for Murphy's wit. Shod left at the end of the 8th season, and his character was replaced during season 9 by veteran TV producer Kay Carter Shepley, Lily Tomlin. Kay did not have a background in journalism, but instead made a career as a producer of game shows. Actor Charles Kimbrough, best known as Jim in Murphy Brown, last words before he died. There comes a time when we realize that our parents cannot save themselves or save us. That everyone who wades through time eventually gets dragged out to sea by the undertow that, in the midst of life, we're in death.